the Gulf Coast.
What's going on? It's your boy Mixmaster B here live from the MMB Radio studios for the MMB Radio Podcast, where no topic is too big or too small. We talk about them all, and it is officially WrestleMania week, the biggest week on the wrestling calendar, where fans all over the world tune in to see the showcase of the Immortals, and it's going down this weekend, Saturday and Sunday. But before then, we're going to talk to a gentleman who I have a lot of respect for. Not only is he a two-time award-winning producer for Hopkins Medical News, he's also a member of the National Association for Black Journalists. The guy hosts multiple podcasts. I mean, the guy he does everything. I don't know where he finds all the time to do it. He is co-host of the Wrestling Wrealm, which is celebrating their 10-year anniversary. I want to welcome him in right now, Brian H. Waters. Brian, what's going on?
What's up, man? How you feeling?
I'm doing awesome, man. And just before we get started talking about WrestleMania and, you know, NXT TakeOver Stand and Deliver, which is tonight. So we are recording this before it airs tonight. So we got all kinds of questions for you. I want to make note, the Wrestling Wrealm, 10-year anniversary. Mm-hmm. To do 10 years of anything is something to be honored and, you know, give kudos to. I mean, people sometimes, they can't even have a 10-year relationship or a marriage. But you've been doing 10 years of this.
It's funny because you said 10-year relationship or marriage. Shortly around the time when the Wrestling Wrealm started, me and my now wife, we were together probably about six to 8 months. And I remember she kept on saying that me and the real Dwayne Allen have a bromance. And she kept saying that word over and over again. But yeah, 10 years, it's been amazing. It's been a fun journey. A lot of ups and downs on the road. And when I say downs, I don't mean like arguments or breakups or anything like that. Just more so, trying to figure out how we will move and shake. So for instance, when we was through about 2 years in, I got a call to go to ESPN and work for, work up there. And the difficulty was, okay, so how do we do the show? And of course, you know, it's not like, you know, I'm living in Baltimore and I'm living in Connecticut. He's still in Baltimore. We was thinking about different remote ways to do it. But then I said, well, I'm about to come back to Baltimore. So then I come back and, you know, we had some other ventures we were in, some of them together, just doing other things. So, I always said when we didn't have the time, we got the best equipment. When we didn't have the equipment, we had the most time in the world. But we found a way. We now created the Wrestling Wrealm Now podcast, which airs every week. I'm excited. We will be doing a WrestleMania preview show. But we still have the flagship show that made people fall in love with us. The show that's on YouTube where we take a deep dive in different topics. The latest we did was AEW as a copy of competition. And I'll be happy to reveal on here that we have another one called Black Excellence in Pro Wrestling. So that'll be something that people will love and look forward to.
And again, it's worth noting. I mean, 10 years to do anything is you know, remarkable. I mean, you were doing a podcast on wrestling before podcasting became like the trendy thing. I mean, you think about it, everybody has podcasts now. Everybody has access to equipment to do a podcast. You guys were doing this before it was the cool thing to do with, you know, minimum software and equipment. So, hey, my hat's off to you guys, and expanding it to new ventures of doing the podcasting with, you know, doing the Wrestling Wrealm Now show and so much more. But let me ask you before we get into anything else, what made you want to do a wrestling podcast? Obviously, besides being a passionate, raving wrestling fan, you know, what made you decide, you know, this is something that I need to do? Because you were doing all kinds of other stuff. What made you want to do wrestling?
Yeah, so certainly what happened, I got to tell this story because in order for everything to make sense. My uncle died around April 2010. It was a sudden death. And when he died, you know, a lot of times families will come together and you see cousins and stuff you don't see all the time. So I remember going over to my aunt's house and I was, you know, sat there talking with my cousin. So I'm being the person that I am. I check on people after, you know, they experience the death. And so in my cousin's case, it's his stepfather. I was calling him, hey man, how you doing? Just checking on you. Well, if there was a household in the family that ordered every wrestling pay-per-view, it was them. Every single pay-per-view, we talked about how when they had a streak, it ended with the unfortunate Over the Edge 99. They didn't order that pay-per-view for whatever reason. But up until then, just thinking back to like the 80s, they had ordered every pay-per-view. But him and I was talking, and he was talking about stuff he's seen on YouTube, and he said, man, I wish I could, do X, Y, Z. I said, hey, man, we could have a wrestling show. And we did a wrestling talk show. It lasted a little over a year. We did it, and then we started getting some momentum, and then he got into trouble, and just keeping it 100. He got in trouble. And then I was going to wrestling shows, and I'm starting to see going to the independents, and people were like, hey, you from that Wrestle Talk with Baron B-Dub? And I was like, yeah, and I give a shout out to ring announcer Larry Legend, because he was like the first person who said, oh, that's Baron B-Dub. I'm like, oh my goodness, like Larry knows who I am. And of course I wasn't really new to the indies at this point. I knew who he was because he was like the guy in Baltimore and, in the Philly area announcing everything. So we get there and, so then as I'm doing this, I'm doing individual segments. It was called Main Event, the B-Dub Starts. And as I'm doing B-Dub Starts, I'm like, man, I wish my cousin could get himself together. Well, I go to Morgan State University, and the first semester in my research class, it was how would we research analytics on the Wrestle Talk with Baron B-Dub page. Well, fast forward to the next semester, I'm taking a television production class, and my friend Danny says, we introduced ourselves, and my friend Danny goes, he has a wrestling talk show. And I'm trying to like shush her a little bit. I'm like, Danny, now is the time for that. And she goes, so Dwayne is behind me saying, there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that. So I turn around, are you a wrestling fan? Yes, I am. I said, okay, cool. So I hand him a business card to my show. The rest is history. Within a few days, I said, this is the guy I want to do a show with. And the conversations we were having, we said, man, we can put these on camera. And that's how we really got started. So, just some context, we was using about a $200 camera it says it was HD, but it really wasn't. But we was using that. We was using just that microphone off that camera because at that time, if you wanted podcasting equipment, if you wanted video DSLRs, you was going to pay at least $800. Mm-hmm. And we was using that. We were still using Windows Movie Maker, if anybody can remember, to edit the show. And then, eventually I would get my MacBook and stuff. And as we're learning how to produce television, how to edit better, how to edit professionally, we started applying that to the show. So those early shows were very simple. Like you couldn't do cutaways with videos. You had to like stop the show, insert the video, and then come back. You couldn't overlay it with Windows Movie Maker.
And it's worth noting, too, is not only you guys are so insightful with the pro wrestling business and having great opinions and everything, but having that black wrestling fan perspective of it, I think is very crucial, is very important, because there's so much attention just to wrestling in general, but I don't feel there's enough, as we're starting to see a little bit more given attention towards it. But what's it mean to you to be able to kind of be like that voice of the black wrestling fan?
Being a black wrestling fan, it means a lot. It's kind of like the WWE now, right? We've always been able to show that range. Dwayne people look at him, the first thing they see, because he's 6'7", oh, you must play basketball, right? But what they wouldn't realize, yes, he did play basketball and played at the collegiate level, but he's also a clothing designer. He's also a skateboard guy, but he's a huge wrestling fan. Me, I'm just an average person. I was always called a nerd, was always teased for loving this business. But to be able to show, hey, you know what? There are black wrestling fans. That's been, an honor and a responsibility. Just because, I used to get criticized because I would always kind of understand why certain people wasn't champions, right? But then, I look at it, and I've had a different outlook over the years, but I've never been the one to be like, oh, man, black people never get a chance. And I always got criticized for that. But I've looked at it in different ways and always try to, see it from both sides.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like I don't disagree with a lot of people. I just don't rant and rave about the way they would like me to. In November 2019, my friend Vanessa and I had went to a show in Philly. We was at the American Heart Association conference, and while we were up there, I said, "Hey, SmackDown's in town," and shout out. This is the day Mia Yim made her main roster debut. She's a friend of mine, and I remember being there. And Vanessa is a white woman, and she says, "Brian, wow, there's more black wrestling fans. I always thought she was the only black wrestling fan I knew." And I was like, "No," So that's been pretty cool.
Now, what is your first memory of pro wrestling? We've had other guests on, and I always like to get their thoughts of what is their first memory of pro wrestling. What's the first thing that you can say you remember as a child, your first wrestling experience?
The crisscross, getting ready for WrestleMania 6, Hulk Hogan and the Ultimate Warrior. My grandfather, God rest his soul, in 1990, we was getting ready to go to, we was leaving church that evening, and it's about 6 o'clock, and I remember my dad was holding my hands like, "Come on, buddy, it's time to go home." And I was about 3 years old, getting ready to turn 4 in that August. And I said, "No, I'm going over to Grandpappy's house." He said, "No, I think you're coming home with me." And I was kind of getting like teary-eyed or whatever. And my grandfather came and saved the day. He said, "No, he's coming with me." Now, this is back in the day when kids could sit in the front seat. So my grandfather had a nice Cadillac. I think it was a Cadillac DeVille. And I sat in the front seat with him. And I remember we was getting ready to ride home, and people was like, "Hey, Paul, are you going to watch wrestling tonight?" He said, "Yeah, we're on our way home now to watch WrestleMania." Man, one night, Hogan was going this way, Warrior was going this way. He was describing it. And I remember that, ironically, years later at Johns Hopkins where I work, my friend Vanessa, who I was just mentioned earlier, we was doing an interview with the doctor, and I'm sitting there and I see the the signed photo of Hulk Hogan, and Ultimate Warrior, the ring shot. And I was like, so I just casually asked the doctor, "How much you want for that photo?" And he looked and he goes, "Oh, you're a wrestling fan?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "You can have it." Wow. I was like, "You sure?" He said, "Yeah." And I was like, "Wow, thank you." He said, "Yeah, his agent is a patient of mine, and Joe Montana as well, so he just gives me free stuff all the time." So, I'm gonna keep it 100. It may not be cool to be black and a Hogan fan. I always ask anybody who was born in 1986, how big were you a Hulkamaniac? And then let's have a conversation, because I've always felt Hogan was absolutely wrong. I forgive him, but I feel he was wrong. I think the apology was not constructed well at all. He needed a better PR team. But I also look at it as, I'm not going to hold on to that. And it's tough. Most people who don't like Hulk Hogan didn't like Hulk Hogan anyway, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, it totally makes sense. I mean, it's funny you say the WrestleMania 6, because I feel like WrestleMania 6, in my opinion, that was when I felt like WrestleMania felt like bigger. Being in Toronto in the Sky Dome. Like prior to that, WrestleMania was WrestleMania. But I've always felt like that one there was the one, because it was in the Dome, because it just felt, at the time, they had the big, screens there that they used to have for, the Blue Jays games, the video screens. And just, I don't know, just that, the sight of that just made everything feel so much bigger. But I can say that I wasn't so much a Hulk Hogan fan as I was an Ultimate Warrior fan. And here's my reasoning for it. Before I started getting heavy into the action figure collecting and all that stuff, I can remember being a kid, and my mom was working a part-time holiday job at a toy store. And all I kept telling her was, I want the Ultimate Warrior Hasbro little figurine, the one where you just pushed his back and did the Ultimate Warrior leap. So that's the only thing I wanted that whole Christmas, was just this one basic action figure. And I was just hooked on it. I just loved, the green and neon colors of it, which was, obviously popular at the time. Every kid loved neon colors back then. So I'm an 80s baby, so I'm loving all the neon stuff and everything like that. And, that was I was Ultimate Warrior, I didn't really hate Hogan, but I wasn't crazy about him as some other people were. I had friends that had everything, the wrestling buddies, the action figures. They had the costumes and everything. And I'm like, yeah, Hogan, he all right, but he ain't Ultimate Warrior. So I totally agree with what you're saying is, clearly what Hogan did was wrong. I'm just a believer that you give forgiveness and you try to move on, because I feel like it's only hurting us more by holding on to something painful. I don't know if that makes sense to people, but I feel like it's affecting me more to hold on to anger than it is, while he's already said his piece, he's moving on with his life. So why am I going to continue to be, upset about it? But with that said, again, I wasn't really a crazy Hogan fan anyway, so I didn't really lose anything.
It's funny because I get it, and I was. I mean, from day one, diehard Hogan fan. Me and Dwayne used to go at, have a lot of funny conversations earlier days of the Wrestling Wrealm about me being a fan, and like I said, I read the book, and when I read the book, I saw that I'm a man of faith. I saw that he changed his life around. And he was on the verge of suicide, and it was Layla Ali that saved his life. And from then, he was a believer. And when I found out the timeline when everything happened, I think that's what, if it happened after that, I'm like, okay, whatever. But I'm like, you know what? I want to give him the benefit of the doubt that maybe this is a part of something that changed from his life. And I was called, man, you'd be surprised the heat I was getting. You ain't black and all this other stuff. I'm like, say what you want. I'm not going to sit there and hold on to it because there's a lot of other people that I could do that to, And I even found myself wishing that stuff would come out about other wrestlers, and I had to dial it back just because I wanted everybody else to get the same heat. But I said most of the people who felt that way, I'm like, y'all didn't like Hogan anyway. Y'all thought he ruined TNA or WCW, so you was already over him. So.
Well, that's how some fans are. Some fans just want to add on and bury people, and as you mentioned, being a strong believer of faith and everything, we're taught to forgive, and so it is what it is.
But I had the wrestling buddies too. Matter of fact, I had Hogan and Warrior. And Warrior. The Warrior one lasted longer. You beat the stuff out of him, but the Warrior lasted longer. I always said, like in wrestling, I always look at there's a lot of like trinities, right? And to me, during the 80s era when I grew up, when I first got into wrestling in the late 80s, the early 90s, that trinity was Hogan, Savage, and Warrior. Mm-hmm. And then, like, to me, during the new generation, it was probably Shawn and Brett and Shawn, insert another person, Mm-hmm. And then during the Attitude, to me, is Rock Austin, Triple H, not sure who you put with Cena, is the Cena, Orton, and insert another person. Mm-hmm. But I always look at it like, those were the guys, those three. When I grew up, like when I would play the video games, WWF, WrestleMania Challenge, I would have the matches between those three. So,
and I totally agree with that. That's very good a comparison of each era and generation of wrestling. And we see a lot of the new up-and-coming stuff with NXT. So I want to ask you about NXT TakeOver Stand and Deliver. Tonight is night one. What are you looking for and excited about from night one?
Let's see. Let me make sure I look at the matches right, because I've been paying attention to NXT TakeOver, but I haven't like indulged into the card. It's one of the things I know I'm gonna watch. But like the way I kind of have an idea on like night one and night two of Mania, that's what I'm trying. I know I can tell you like what match I'm looking forward to the most, and that's probably Tampa and Walter overall. Mm-hmm. Just being a huge fan of, I'm a huge fan of Walter, and I feel like Tampa is kind of like, he's not the same to me.
And it's funny you say that because I was just mentioning last night on Twitter about how, before his injury, he had this major push. He was on top of the world, and, him and Goldie. And then he had the injury and came back, and it was almost like they were like, hey, when you come back, like, that push is not going to happen anymore. And I had somebody reply and say, well, he's at a point now where he's putting over younger talent. And that could have been a decision on his own. It could have been a decision by WWE to kind of scale him back. But as a wrestling fan, you kind of wanted to see, a little bit more because he had done so much on the indie scene. And this was, in all talks, pretty much major league for him. So I kind of wish I would have seen a little bit more when he came back with the, the championship picture. But I'm definitely in tuned into the whole Walter match. I'm really high on Walter. A lot of people are saying that, he doesn't have the physique as, he's not all, ripped up and everything. But I love the old school mentality of him, like that ring general that he calls himself. I think he really is like a ring general. Like he gives that old school. Mm-hmm. And I love that whole holding on to the title for so long, so it makes you like he feels like the final boss, you know what I mean, in a video game. Like you're like, all right, this guy's been there, you know who he is, you got to defeat him. So I'm really excited to see how well that goes, because those guys, I mean, you want to talk about strong style. Those two can sit there and whoop on each other and really lay into it. So that should be interesting to see how they're going to do that. Is there anything else from TakeOver that you're looking forward to?
Oh, man, Finn Balor and Karrion Kross. Those two, because right now it's like, okay, who wins, right? It's not so cut and dry. Does Balor continue to me, Mr. NXT, the greatest NXT champion? But then again, there's Adam Cole, baby, who you can make an argument against with. But Karrion Kross never lost. So this is going to be interesting. I'm interested to see, do we get the Demon King, the Demon Finn Balor. So that's another match. I'm definitely looking forward to the vacant tag team titles, MSK, GVY, and Legado. Mm-hmm. So I love MSK. Shout out to, I'm about to call him by his indie name, Desmond Xavier. Mm-hmm. I remember when he was here, I did some work at CZW and WSU up in the Philly, Jersey area, and just watching his growth. I remember when he first got into the business. So being able to see him, I'm really excited about.
And I'm actually really excited about the Adam Cole and, O'Reilly match.
They gonna beat the crap out of each other.
The video package that they put out last week, that video package was so well done that I was tweeting out, I'm like, this is the hype I need for WrestleMania. Like that video package, mm-hmm. I was like, all right, can we just have this match now? Like that video package just leading up to it just had me like, okay, ring the bell. Let's get this going right now. So I'm really excited about seeing that. And I see that AEW is countering with bringing Mike Tyson on tonight. So I don't know if that's an attempt to kind of, sway some fans away from watching TakeOver. But TakeOver Night 1 is on USA, Night 2 on Peacock. And I want to get your opinion on the whole Peacock situation, because I've been asking fans, too, like, what do they feel with the whole Peacock situation? Do you think it's good? Do you think it's bad? Is it indifferent?
So I got to talk to it in both ways, right? I got to talk to it let me start from a wrestling fan perspective. I don't like it. The WWE Network's interface was so easy to use. That was the place that was like, as wrestling fans, that was ours. We knew how bad our wrestling was at times. We knew how good it was. We knew all the ups, the downs, the cringy moments, right? And we still, if we wanted to live back in those days, even with a certain guy, I'm not sure if I could say his name on your show, but we could go back and watch his matches. Mm-hmm. But then, now that it's on Peacock, it's, because it's sharing a space essentially with all these other shows, it's like, well, now I got to get to that. The Peacock app, I have a PlayStation 5. Sometimes it doesn't load up properly. The WWE app, once it got going, once, they worked all the bugs out, it was smooth. And I understand we got to get that way with Peacock. So that's that part, right? But from putting on a business hat, it's totally genius. As a shareholder in the WWE, I love it. Because what it's going to do, it's going to bring more eyeballs to the product. There are people who are going to be sitting at home for Saturday and Sunday looking for something to watch and say, oh, well, this WrestleMania thing is on. Well, let me watch this. I don't watch wrestling no more, but I can watch WrestleMania for free. Let me watch it. So from that aspect, I understand it totally. I'm excited about it because hopefully it will, let's say, I try not to be one of the people that really harp on creative, but it is what it is. So what I'm hoping is that it causes them to really up their ante and we'll get a better product.
And I'm pretty much on the same page with you as far as, being a fan. I feel like the Peacock layout is a little confusing. I mean, they got like King of the Ring 96, I think, in like the Attitude Era, and I'm like, I guess maybe that's considered beginning of Attitude Era. I'm not too sure. I mean, there's a lot of like the whole kind of like the menu and everything is a little wacky and weird for me. And I'm hoping by the time SummerSlam gets here, when they say they're going to have the whole catalog available to fans, that it'll be streamlined a little bit easier and you can kind of find things a little bit better. The only things that I'm a little like down on is the commercial breaks on the replays and stuff, but at least they're timely placed. I was really afraid that it was going to be like in the middle of a match or something, because I've watched a lot of like the other app stuffs like Pluto and Tubi and everything, and you could literally be watching a show and they'll put a commercial like in the middle of a sentence of a movie, and you're like, all right, we're just going to come back mid-sentence, so it'd be really horrible to see like a Stone Cold Stunner or a Rock Bottom, and then right in the middle, before he hits it, it's, a commercial for, something crazy. So from that,
And to be honest with you, I paid the extra $5. I have Xfinity, so I got it for free. Yeah. And I said, you know what? I was already paying $10 a month for WWE Network. So I'm saving money. Why not pay the $5 just so I went to watch those ads? Because I was afraid that they was going to try to throw ads during WrestleMania or something. I was like, I ain't about to deal with that.
See, and I was in the same boat. I have Xfinity, and I'm like, all right, do I upgrade, And so far, I mean, we haven't had any commercials during live pay-per-views, which is good.
Okay.
So for the time being, I'm like, I can ride this out. Like, the commercials weren't, overbearing to the point where I'm like, all right, I need to up my tier. But maybe you can answer this question. This was something I was asking people, and nobody really had an answer. So, I mean, is there no longer a live continuous stream of the WWE Network?
Yeah, the WWE Network is officially gone now. Okay. I went to log on 2 days ago, and it said your network is gone. I was the sharer, and so I shared with my friends. So one of my friends she doesn't watch. Shout out to Ashley Baker. She doesn't watch wrestling like she used to, but I said, well, here, you may want to see some old stuff here. You can have my network log in. And it's WrestleMania week, so she's trying to get ready, get hyped up for WrestleMania, because she always tunes into it. But there was no WrestleMania for her because there was no network. So she was the one who notified me, said, yeah, your network's gone.
Yeah, because I know internationally it's still being used on the app, and you could turn on the WWE app and you would have that continuous, just a live stream of it, where it would just be a schedule of just random stuff that they're just continuously playing. So I noticed last night when I tuned into the Hall of Fame, it kind of like before it started, it tells you your broadcast is about to start and all this, and I kind of like caught the end of like an NXT commercial. So it makes me think that there's still some kind of like continuous stream out there on the international app, that Peacock just doesn't continue a continuous stream. It's all solely on demand, but which is fine with me. I don't really need a continuous live stream, because it usually was like the 3 or 4 same shows that they just kept showing every day over and over again. So WrestleMania this weekend, a lot of anticipation for it, because it's the first event of that magnitude where we're going to have fans in the stands. AEW has done it. Some other people have had, small fans, but this is the first big deal. What is your expectations for WrestleMania?
I'm expecting everybody on that card to blow it out the water. Because the same way we miss them, they miss us. So, I'm expecting everybody to just bring it 120%. I think, this is the worst built WrestleMania in history. And this is somebody who pretty much remembers the builds from every WrestleMania, starting with 9 and ever since then. But I think this is the worst one, just because you have some matches that was just made a few weeks ago. Some stuff is like, wait, what are they doing? But with that being said, I think the talent's going to overcome all that. And we could be looking at, a WrestleMania that we put up there in the top tier. I will say that for some reason, it seems like every year since 33, they get better every year, right? I remember WrestleMania 30, waiting for that one. So 28 was the first one I attended, and of course I thought it was the greatest thing in the world. I tell everybody, if you ever gone to a WrestleMania, please treat yourself and go to one. Whatever your favorite one was before, borrowing the card is just terrible and none of your favorites win, it will become your favorite one. But then after that, 29 was like, to me, the build-up was weird, but I felt it was a WrestleMania that I would enjoy after getting away from that era and going back and watching it. 30 was phenomenal, and Daniel Bryan's my favorite wrestler. And then 31, I was not looking forward to it, and it delivered. 32, they did what they could with the injured roster. But every year after that, I felt it was good. Like, once you got there and everything was happening, I felt like everybody was bringing it. With that being said, I think that's what happens this Saturday and Sunday. I do like the 2 nights just because I think it's too long to do those 6-hour WrestleManias. It's like, all right, you know what? This is a long time. So I think this is I don't think they do this all the time, but I think it's cool.
And I totally agree with the 2-night event. At first, I wasn't sure how I felt about WrestleMania being over 2 nights. And we had a guest on earlier this week, Kenny from Your Thoughts podcast, and he was mentioning about how tiring he was at WrestleMania in 35 in New York, about how when the ladies came on in the main event, people were so drained. It was kind of the ladies didn't get their flowers. They didn't get their due diligence, and a lot of people were just kind of so exhausted that they were just tuned out for the ending of that match, and it didn't really get a lot of the excitement it did. And I had brought up that I said, I felt like the main event of that WrestleMania, no shade or, towards the women, but I felt like the Kofi Kingston match was the highlight of that WrestleMania. And he brought up a good point. He says, but think about it. If that had been the main event and that had went on last and the people were just so exhausted, would that moment have felt as special? And would you have gotten that pop if it, went on last? And he brought up a good point. He said, imagine going out on that high, ending it right there, going out on that high, having that amped up and you're excited, like, I can't wait to see what happens tomorrow, and being able to get some of that recharged energy again, how much better it would be. So it'd be interesting to see if they're going to continue to go over 2 nights. A lot of people think this might be a test for them to see if, the 2-night thing is going to work. But we'll see. It's something that it's definitely different, and, WrestleMania has evolved and changed so much over the years that, I'm kind of welcoming the 2-night deal. Sorry. No, say 35. No, 35 was so exhausting for me that I can remember, like, once that final bell rung and, we kind of had that semi-botch of a pin there in that women's match, I was ready to, like, jet out of that stadium. I'm heading back to, Lower Manhattan and getting on, my subways to go back to Brooklyn. So I can say I was exhausted by the time that match came on. So, what is your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I agree. So I was at 33. That was the last one I attended. And I feel like 33 was like maybe the first of the really long ones. It may not have been, but it feels like it. And it was the way 33 was booked. One, we was nervous that the women's match was going to get canceled because we had seen that happen before. So we was nervous about that. But if you remember, they rushed through everybody's entrance except Naomi's because it was her hometown and she had the glow. Now, it made sense that match took place because I think they learned their lesson with Bray Wyatt and The Undertaker, a match that we will never have that magic that we were supposed to have because it was outside of the light. But the thing was when, I looked at it, 35, and, sitting at home, we was like, man, this feels like we're supposed to clock in and clock out. And I remember doing the show afterwards, only for the audio, Adobe Audition decided not to record the second part of the show. And I was just like mad because a couple of my boys had stayed over a little bit longer so that we could record. But, no, I definitely agree. And I've always felt exactly how Kenny felt. And I remember sitting there that night asking, Blake and Dwayne, my boys, was like, do y'all think that, I know Kofi didn't close the show, but it felt like that was the end of the night. Yeah. Because after that, I know my dad left, my uncle left, my uncle was saying he was going to come back. He was going to drop his kids off. But it was just like, all right, we seen what we wanted to see. And why it meant a lot for the women to main event the show. You know, it just comes down to, I understand, you know, people deserve WrestleMania paydays, I guess. But maybe there's something where you build up that last SmackDown before the show. And that's like your semi-WrestleMania. You know what I mean? Because it's a lot to ask people to stay at these shows and maintain that high that for that long. Because Becky did not, in my opinion, get the pop that she would have gotten had it taken place earlier. But, you know, I watch that Kofi match all the time, and it's just like that energy, that pop was everything.
Yeah. And it reminds me of WrestleMania 32 when you had Triple H versus Roman Reigns going on last. And I was sitting next to a bunch of guys that are in my row, and I'm looking at my watch, and, you know, you get the 1 hour time difference between, you know, Philly and Texas. And I'm like looking at it, and I'm saying to the guys, I'm like, wait, like this is like the timing is really off. Like we've gone so much further in time that we were, you know, accustomed to up to that point. And it was just such a, and I'm like looking at it, I'm like, wait, if it says it's 11 o'clock here, it's 12 o'clock back home. And the guys were from Virginia, and they're like, yeah, it's 12 o'clock back home. Like, what's going on? And I'm like, we haven't even started this match yet. And I mean, you weren't going to get a lot of people that were going to be overly hyped for Roman at the time, and you had Triple H. You know, so you already had people who are already set in on their feelings about Triple H and Roman Reigns, and, you know, Roman's being pushed down our throats, Triple H is always stealing the spotlight. Factor in that we've been sitting there for 5 hours, and we're tired, and we want to go the frig home. And that's what happened. You got that reaction in that match, and it just, it's upsetting because, like you said, a lot of these talents, whether you like creative and how they handle people, they're doing this for a living. You know, this is their job. This is their payday. And it sucks that they kind of get the backlash and the heat from fans when it's not creative heat. And when I say creative heat, I mean heat they're supposed to get because they're being written as the bad guy. You know, like when you got the face getting heat because he's being pushed down our throats and he's going on last after a 5-hour WrestleMania. You know, it's one of those things. What is the number one match though you want to see for this weekend at WrestleMania?
Sasha and Bianca.
Okay.
I bought my my Bianca Belair shirt, so I got the EST. But that doesn't necessarily mean I'm rooting for her. But that was just like, you know, now Kofi, I was rooting for him, but I felt like I had to get that shirt. Just like Bianca, I mean, you know, first black woman to win the Royal Rumble. So I'm excited about that. But I also got a Sasha Banks Wale Mania shirt on the way. It won't get here in time for WrestleMania.
Yeah, I saw that. I definitely copped that myself this morning. I think it was you that I seen you retweet it out, and it had the Foot Locker and Foot Action link to it. And so shout out to you for retweeting that, because that's what caught my attention this morning. And I was torn. I'm like, all right, which one do I get? Do I get the Sasha Banks or do I get the Kofi? And I'm like, I really don't need both of them, because I literally have hundreds and hundreds of wrestling tees. Some that I still have tags on that I have never even worn yet.
Oh wow.
So it's, believe me, I need an intervention with a lot of wrestling things.
Hey, it's nothing wrong with that.
So I definitely copped the Sasha one. So I'm hoping we get a good match with that.
Tell Wale that that you saw it on my Twitter. Maybe
definitely get some royalties and stuff, dude. You know, some marketing royalties sent your way.
Yeah, but I definitely I probably overspent this WrestleMania season. Between that and Chalkline, dropping, I got the WrestleMania 2000 shorts on now, and the WrestleMania 18 shorts. I asked them, y'all gonna make jackets for these WrestleManias? Because if so, I'm buying. So, but yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to Sasha and Bianca. I think that I think the story going in. I know people have been a little upset with the way the build has been. But I really don't hate it. If I was a writer, of course, I would have wrote it differently. But, you know, these small little slaps and jabs going from happy-go-lucky to be here to, look, I'm about to kick you behind. I actually like this story. So I think I'm a winner either way. So if Sasha wins, she gets her first WrestleMania win. And if she loses, Bianca is the champion. So as long as we don't get a false finish.
Yeah, no dusty finishes, please.
Mm-hmm.
And it's you were saying about the build up for it, and I had mentioned it on Britt Waters had put on my wrestling opinion, and shout out to your bloodline there. She had put out there and you're like, what do you think about this matchup? And I had commented on her IG post, and I said, I really felt like they didn't make Sasha a heel in a traditional way. Like, one week she was like beating up Bayley, and it was like she was the face, and then it was just like, boom, next week, you know what I mean? Like, back to like cocky, arrogant, like I'm the boss. And I just felt like it was just very quick for the heel turn. Like, I'm like, can we had her like do at least one defense outside of Carmella to kind of build up that heel thing? So I don't know. I felt like it was very rushed for her to become the heel, which in my opinion didn't make it feel as real, if that makes sense. Like, I felt like she became a heel too quickly.
No, I totally understand where you're coming from. I'm looking at it a different way, though, and this is why I always love having wrestling conversations, because it's always a great opportunity to exchange information. The way I look at it is, I don't look at her as necessarily a heel as in a rule breaker. And I go back to my WWF Warzone days when you want to make somebody a fan favorite or a rule breaker. I don't look at her as a rule breaker heel, but I look at her as that arrogant fan favorite, like, y'all can ride with me and that's fine, but if you don't, I'm the boss, so you're just jealous of me. And that Sasha Banks, there's always been this notion that Bianca Belair, before they even touched each other, Bianca Belair does Sasha Banks better than Sasha Banks does Sasha Banks, because she would say she's the EST and of NXT and WWE. And then you have Sasha, who is like, okay, she's this boss, but what makes her a boss? Now she has the gold. She has the championship. That makes her the boss. So with that being said, I like this version of her. Now she's showing us she's the boss. I like her always calling Bianca a rookie, so I don't really need her to be the traditional heel, other than what I want to see her do is just constantly emphasize, constantly be arrogant. She's going on the Vixen borderline. So I like it.
And it's cool, like, you put it that way, is that they're blurring the lines a little bit, that there doesn't have to be a clear heel or clear face with this match, that they can kind of like both be good at what they're doing. And I have to say that I like Belair a lot more now that she's on the main roster than when she was in NXT. Okay. Because my feeling in NXT is like, I felt like, yes, she got a lot of opportunities for the championship and lost. And however they wrote it, I felt like she just kind of complained a lot about like, oh, well, this person interfered and that person interfered with just due. But I just felt like it didn't do her any justice by just continuously putting her in championship matches and losing somehow. No,
you are absolutely right.
And I don't say this to, sound, ignorant or anything. Like, I kind of felt like she came off as like the angry black girl in NXT. Was always complaining about stuff, and that may have been how they wrote her in NXT. But I'm like, obviously the girl has talent, but like, why do you keep putting her in championship matches? Like, you build her up, like she struggles and fights and claws to get to the championship match, and then when she gets to the championship match, she's either getting squashed or done dirty, and it was just like, it made me think, like, what was the whole point of the whole struggle to get to the championship match, only for the championship match to be kind of like irrelevant?
Well, see, that's why I'm not a fan of undefeated win streaks, for that reason. Because where do you go from here? We saw what happened with Asuka. She goes undefeated. She wins the championship. She relinquishes the title, goes to the main roster, and then boom, she is rock bottom against Charlotte, and everybody hated it. But I was like, to me, that's a top 5 WrestleMania match of all time, Asuka and Charlotte. But what I looked at was, I'm like, when you do that, where do you go? We saw it with Goldberg. I don't think anybody else will even eclipse that, maybe Walter, if he hasn't lost. But that's it, but when she was in NXT, I hated the fact that she was she was going all the way up, and I just knew, okay, she's going to beat Shayna. She's going to become the champion. And then once she lost, it felt like she got lost in the whirlwind. Mm-hmm. So, I was happy when she was going at Raw, what she's doing on what she did on Raw, but then she kind of got pushed to the side, and I guess she had to really just learn the TV style and really learn stuff to, and shout out to her for being patient. She could have been one of the people complaining and whatnot, but obviously she was patient, she listened, and now look where she's at.
Yeah, and I wasn't a big fan of when they kind of paired her up with the Street Profits. I mean, obviously reasons for why, being married. But I just felt like she has the ability and the talent to stand on her own. And I understood, it was a different time, the pandemic, and, there was just a lot of different things going on to why. And it could have been, back to what you're saying, just learning how to do the TV aspect of it. By putting her out there and kind of getting her more comfortable on the, main roster television as opposed to NXT television. But I've been really impressed with her, ever since, winning the Royal Rumble. So we'll see. I just hope that it's a real solid match. And, what is your thoughts? Do you think it should be the main event for night one?
Absolutely. Absolutely. If we want to keep it 100, right? When you really look at it, moving forward, if they do a 2-night WrestleMania, both Royal Rumble matches should be the main event. Mm-hmm. I believe that you can build these women. A lot of times we was at a stage where the women was the bathroom break, but now they have the stories that, personally, like when I'm playing my video games, back when wrestling video games was working well, because WWE 2K20, I'm still upset that
we're not going to go there with that.
Right. But, I would always try to build it where the women and the men's stories were equal, make them matter. We want to get to a point where we want equality with our entertainment, right? So then when you see a match of Big E versus Apollo Crews, it gets to the point where we're not so focused on, wow, we got two black people going for the Intercontinental Championship. And then somebody else said, but we shouldn't be having black on black crime. I want to see this where we see, like I was looking at the card, I said, oh, this is really cool. We do have multiple black superstars on a WrestleMania card, something you didn't always see in prominent matches. We've always had people of color, Roman Reigns, Yokozuna, The Rock, but to see, African-born wrestlers. So I want to see that. I want to see the women in multiple stories. I want to see, there's always a potential to do at least 3 women's matches every year at WrestleMania. Why aren't they doing it? You got 3 tags, you got 3 championships, So I think this should main event. I think considering the history, but also let's look what Sasha did last year. Shout out to her and Bayley. They carried us through this pandemic, and to do both shows constantly, I think she should be in there. It's upsetting that Bayley's not even on WrestleMania, considering all that she does. I think Bayley's the pound for pound best wrestler in the 4 horsewomen. I think Sasha has the most crossover appeal, and I think Charlotte's the best athlete, and Becky is the person who can organically make you fall in love with her. So they all bring something, but I would love to see, I definitely think this should main event. I don't see nothing else, no offense to Bobby and Drew, but another thing about that, we've seen it already. Mm-hmm. This is a match we've never seen before. The triple threat match for the Universal Championship match, a match we've never seen before. So if it's a match we've never seen before, it should main event.
Now, what wild, crazy prediction do you have for WrestleMania? Because there's so many people that are saying this is going to happen, this is going to happen, that's going to happen. What's something that you are brewing up that's going to happen at WrestleMania that nobody would have seen coming?
Oh man, that's tough because it's so much, and now hearing that TNT doesn't like surprises, so it makes you wonder, do WWE say, but we can do surprises and do a surprise at WrestleMania, or do they hold it off for the next night on Raw? I'm not sure. Do you know if there's fans on the next night on Raw?
I have not heard about that, but it came to my mind that, I know they're going to the Yuengling Center. They're going to be doing the Thunderdome from there. But I'm curious, and I don't know if you've heard anything about this. Like, is SmackDown live this week? Because the Tampa Bay Rays have a game at Tropicana Field. So are they?
Oh wow!
I just noticed. I'm looking at the schedule. I'm like, wait, they play the Yankees at 3:05. So there's no way that they're building the Thunderdome up, for that night's SmackDown. But then people were saying that their new residency for the Yuengling Center would be starting on Monday Night Raw. So I'm like, well, where the hell's SmackDown taking place? Have they've been hush and recorded this, or are they recording it Thursday? Like, I don't know. I don't know anything about that.
And maybe they have recorded it because you think about it, SmackDown being on Friday, that's a quick turnaround, So maybe they want to give the boys and girls some time to, rest and recuperate.
Yes, I'm really curious to see what they're going to do with that, but I haven't heard anything else, in regards to that.
Yeah, I think I had to choose a wild prediction. I don't know in what fashion, but I just can't see John Cena staying away. I think he makes an appearance at WrestleMania.
Okay. I've had a lot of people throw, and I've seen a lot of weird, things out there. I've been saying that I'm curious of when Brock's going to return, because I just feel like it's going to happen at some point. I had somebody that was trying to connect the lines, and they're saying, like all the gold, the promo song they've been using during the lead up to WrestleMania. It keeps saying like, I'm a beast, and it keeps repeating that in his song, and they're like, oh, that's the clue. And I'm like, I don't know if that's much of a stretch. I had someone else say, well, Bobby Lashley keeps saying it true, like, your time is up. It's the almighty era, and someone's like, oh, his time is up. My time is now. It's going to be John Cena. It's going to take out Drew. And I'm like, I don't know. I mean, there's wild predictions, and then there's ones that I think make more logical sense. One of them being Bayley is not on the card. Is she going to open some kind of open challenge? Is she going to play some kind of role? It would be really hard to believe that Bayley is not going to be involved on the card somehow. People are saying she's not injured. She's saying she's not injured. Like, how do you become the longest reigning SmackDown Women's Champion and going through that long ride to, well, creative just doesn't have anything for you? Like, I don't know. To me, that just doesn't add up. Like, I feel like there's something, people, Kenny was saying about you. He thinks Becky's going to come and do a squash match against Bayley. It's really curious to see what they're going to do. And I'm hoping that we do get some surprises, because you got the Raw after WrestleMania. Usually there's all the surprises, but I feel like Peacock's paying a lot of money for WrestleMania. They're going to want something big to happen on WrestleMania, although they are the parenting company of USA as well. I think they would rather something big and WrestleMania.
Yeah, you hit it right on the head. Even if there's something where it's like, okay, tune in. We could throw this out there. Bayley and Becky win the tag titles. They come in. Look who's the champ, Nia Jax. Nia Jax and Becky have a long history. Dare say Nia Jax gave Becky her Rocky moment. So, that's going to be, that's it. Write that down for me.
Making note of that right now. This is Brian's prediction of what's going to happen at WrestleMania. Again, I'm just excited to see what's going to happen. I'm excited to be able to see a crowd again and the reaction and the pop they get for, WrestleMania and having the staging and doing all that. And hopefully this is the direction that we're going in, is the right direction where everybody's getting vaccinated. I'm fully vaxxed right now, so I'm ready to get at it and, just go to live sports again. And I seen you with your Baltimore Orioles, and I know you're, a Ravens fan, so I know you're biting at the bit there to get back to live interaction in crowds and stadiums like that. So I'm hoping by SummerSlam maybe we get some kind of word where SummerSlam might be. Maybe that might be my first, jump back into it. But hopefully, great.
Oh, well,
weekend.
then we're gonna create some content because that's what I want to do too. I was telling my wife, SummerSlam is a goal of mine. So.
And that's the one thing I loved about going to WrestleManias. Like, last year would have been my 10th WrestleMania, and I kind of ended my streak there. And back to what you said earlier in the podcast, where you're like, you got to go to at least one WrestleMania. And I went to 27 in Atlanta, and I kept saying to my friends, I'm like, I got to go to at least one. It's something you have to do as a wrestling fan. And I got bit by the bug, and I just kept going year after year after year. And friends used to ride with me, and now, some of them are like, had a kid, had 2 kids, got married, all that stuff. So these, they're not able to go to all the WrestleMania. So a couple of them I had to ride solo, but the great thing about it is meeting wrestling fans, being able to meet fans in different states and locations and build a friendship with a lot of these people. So I'm really, like I said, just really getting hyped up and excited to be able to go back to doing wrestling shows, and more importantly, to do the meet and greets, because I was a big fan of Access, and I was saying on the last podcast, I'm pro mask, obviously, but I'm not pro mask in a meet and greet where I have to like take a picture and we're all like dressed up in masks and hazmat suits and everything. Like, it just doesn't feel the same. And I'm not like real big on spending, a couple $100 for a Zoom call. So
Exactly.
I'm hoping we can start doing, like it was back in 2019, but with a better conscience and, to what this virus has done to us.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I'm definitely one the same. I was talking to Brent about, next year. I'm like, yeah, fam, we gotta hit up, Dallas or, LA when, those WrestleManias get there, I know she's never been to one. So we was talking about it, saying we gotta make that happen. Same with Dwayne. I only did 2. 28 was my first, and I kicked myself because I went to WrestleCon for WrestleMania 29, but I didn't go to the show because when the tickets, by the time like I was able to afford the tickets, because at the time I was in college, so my refund check money would go to my WrestleMania ticket, and there was only the $600 seats or the $75 seats, and I was like, I ain't going out. I just sat in section 1 something the year before, and I paid $130 for my seat. I can't sit all the way in the nosebleed. And then I started kicking myself and said, you know what? I should have. In Orlando, I sat in the nosebleed. I'll never do it again. I have a WrestleMania budget. So like this year, that was it. Last year, it was just me and the kids, obviously. So we sat here and watched it. The year before that, I had my boys over. This year, I think just Dwayne will come over and my friend Hugh. Hugh and I we grew up from 6th grade, and we was always the wrestling guys, and we went to WrestleMania 28 together. But I think I'm gonna throw some food on the grill, and we're gonna do it up that way.
Yeah, definitely.
So that's the way the WrestleMania budget.
Yeah, I mean,
I did 30.
I was gonna say the WrestleMania budget. I can totally attest to that because I started off where it was like the 27, where I was just happy to be there. And I had pretty good seats. I think I might have been like in the middle area somewhere. And then I got a little, I was feeling myself a little too much. And then I got floor seats for WrestleMania 30, which, you get a souvenir chair and everything, but I didn't like the whole, like, people standing on their chairs. Like, you couldn't see as well.
Oh, yeah.
Like, people think that floor seats are like, oh, you get the best sight. And I'm like, you really don't. So I always shoot for like 100 level. I'm like, first set of rafter seats where I can actually see over people, then, I'm totally for. 32 in Texas was just crazy because if anybody's never been inside the Cowboys Stadium, it's like dug down. So you start off at the top when you walk in and you go downward. And I'm trying to find my seat where I was supposed to be sitting, and the guy's like, oh, you're on the field level. And I'm like, no, I'm not on the field level. I know I'm not on the field level. And I come to find out that I was like where like the 20-yard line would be. So I was maybe like a good 30 yards from the stage, which was crazy. And if anybody's ever gets a chance to go to that stadium, it's bonkers how amazing that stadium is. But I definitely understand the budget thing, and it should be cool. It's it's a time that we can kind of celebrate. We've gone through one hell of a year. Let's just celebrate. Like you said, grill some food. If you're ordering out, just safely distanced everything, make sure everybody's good with that. And it's just, again, hope it's just a great weekend for wrestling fans.
Yeah, and that's the thing, like, let me ask you this about 27.
Mm-hmm.
How did you enjoy it? Because that's your first WrestleMania, and on TV, to me, I remember when it went off, I was like, that was suck. Now I go back and I look at stuff here and there, but how did you enjoy it?
It's hard for me because I look at it through different glasses than some other people do. Again, being my first WrestleMania, being one of the first events that I can say that, I traveled alone on an airplane. Up until that point, I wasn't traveling a lot by myself. So my friends that were there with me, they flew down at a different time, and we were staying in different hotels. So I was not very far from everything. I was like in the Georgia Tech section. So I was only like maybe a 10, 15-minute walk to Access and to the Georgia Dome. So to me, it was cool to be there just to say I witnessed a WrestleMania. So I don't know if I got so caught up in the fact that here I am at a WrestleMania and everything is just bigger than life.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, I didn't really, not that I didn't pay attention to the matches and enjoy the matches, but I wasn't hard to critique them on the matches because I was just blessed and fortunate to say that I was there, if that makes sense.
No, totally. And that's the way I think that if everybody went to a WrestleMania or just in wrestling shows, I've been to a few Monday Night Raws and I've walked away like, I really enjoyed that. She was like, that Raw was terrible, and I remember going to WrestleMania 28. I realized, yeah, TV, that's what they want. They want to do TV sales, but the presentation is there for the fans. Mm-hmm. That's where you maximize the experience. I know a lot of people who didn't like Cena 1. And to me, that's my favorite WrestleMania main event.
Yeah. I love the Cena 1. I felt Cena 1 was better than, Cena 2.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, as far as I think from the aspect of the whole presentation, when you look at it for move, maybe 2 was better than 1. But I just love the atmosphere in Miami. The fact that it was not as cold as 29.
Yep.
I wasn't wearing a hoodie and a beanie at 28. But
right.
I mean, every one of that I've been to, like I said, I'm blessed and fortunate and humble to say that I've been to, 9 of them, and hopefully, 10 was supposed to be last year. So, hopefully, I get to go to more of them. But I'm just humbled to say that I've been to a lot of these events. So each one of them, I like for their own certain things. Even like out in California, like I just like the whole Seth Rollins cashing in moment that's my favorite WrestleMania moment that I've had at a WrestleMania. And people are like, wow, but this match here was so much better. And I'm like, yeah, but to me, it wasn't so much the matches, it is the moments.
Was it like? How surprised were you?
I mean, there was like people buzzing and rumors going around, and the longer the match went on, the more I was thinking this is not going to happen because people are clamoring for it. People are saying it's going to happen on the internet. And I'm like, no, WWE is just notoriously kind of known for not giving us what we want or know what we want better than what we know ourselves. So to me, it was like, I didn't think it was going to happen. So when it did happen and it happened so quickly, it was just, it was a mark out moment for me.
Excuse me. So funny story about that WrestleMania. I'm working at ESPN, and if you remember, the Friday before that, Brock Lesnar was on SportsCenter. Friday or Thursday, he was on SportsCenter, and that's when he revealed that he had signed his extension with the WWE. And but he was in SportsCenter LA, so he wasn't with us. And I remember before I was rooting for Roman because, and even though people didn't think Roman was ready, and I remember me and Dwayne going back and forth. He's like, "You really want to see this guy's champ?" I said, I just want to see Lesnar because Lesnar don't want to be in. He ain't going to have a belt, whatever, right? And when that happened, I remember that night because while I didn't go, I was sitting at home and I was off, but they was tweeting about it. So I was writing tweets and texting my coworker like, hey, write this, And Daniel Bryan being my guy, I had to make sure SportsCenter showed him some love on the Twitter handle. So I said, hey, Daniel Bryan just won the United States Championship. Make sure you write that. Then trying to explain and write the tweet from the Money in the Bank cash in. And I remember everybody laughing at Steve Levy trying to do the SportsCenter read. And he's like, and he's got this briefcase and he's running in. And so, the sad part was I would leave that August, but the funny story with that was, so I put my 2-week notice in that Friday or whatever, and I come back the next time I see my supervisor, he goes, dude, I was going to send you to SummerSlam. I was like, well, go figure. And my last day was the Friday before SummerSlam in Brooklyn. Oh. And he said that Tuesday, Brock Lesnar was there. So I politicked my way. I said, hey, Steve, you know, you got 2 people that's going to be working the evening shift already, and I'm the third. Can I come in early Tuesday and work with Lesnar? I could go home and come back. He's like, well, you know what? You can go ahead and work, whatever. And sure enough, I got to meet Brock. Didn't take a picture with him, which I would have, but that was a really cool experience. You know, Brock was just chill.
Yeah, because he doesn't interact a lot with fans, and you know he's kind of reserved. So that is a moment to have, because not many people get to say they met Brock Lesnar. And it's funny that you say, because he signed an extension, so everybody pretty much wrote that off as that he's going to win at WrestleMania. So that made the cash-in seem a little bit more exciting, because you figure, oh, he signed this big contract, he's staying with WWE, he's not going to lose, you know, and after he signed a big deal with them. So that was that's probably my number one WrestleMania moment that I witnessed. So for me, that was the cash-in. So
that's awesome. Glad, you know, I always love hearing personal WrestleMania moments.
And that's what it all is. It's all about the moments. And I tell people that, you know, don't get so caught up in creative. You know, let's just let things play out. Mm-hmm. And I think, you know, with the internet and everything now and social medias, everybody's got an opinion, which is great. I love the opinions. I love the interactions. Don't let it consume you. You know, like, just enjoy it for what it is. You know, it's entertainment. It's supposed to be an escape. When you start over-analyzing it, it becomes a job. And that's, you know, it's a job that I ain't getting paid for.
Bingo. Do you have an unpopular WrestleMania that you like that nobody else does?
I mean, jeez. I mean, that's tough because, I mean, a lot of people like didn't like 9. And I liked WrestleMania 9 just because of the just because of the just because of the whole
Somebody else likes it.
Yeah, like everybody like shits on WrestleMania 9, you know, because of the ending of it. Mm-hmm. But I just felt like you know, I just love the whole atmosphere, the whole theme of it, you know, the whole being outside. You know, just was cool for me because at the time we didn't really see, you know, outdoor wrestling events like that. And a lot of people were, like I said, you know, throwing shade on the fact that Hogan came in and, you know, got that, you know, quick match on Yokozuna. And even in the Yokozuna Icons documentary, you know, people were saying that they, you know, afterwards people were like, oh, I didn't like the fact that, you know, Yoko was on like a top of the world and then they just kind of had him job to Hogan. But I don't know. I mean, I always wanted to play in video games. I always wanted to play with that like Parade Arena. You know, I just love the outside effect and the whole Caesars thing.
So that's actually one that was on Legends of WrestleMania. You know, I hated that video game because they changed the controllers and it was so confusing. But so WrestleMania 9 for the longest time was my favorite WrestleMania. And people always say, why, whatever. One, it was the first WrestleMania that my parents ordered for me when, you know, I was 6, and we had just got cable earlier that year or the year before. And, you know, that was like every year they ordered WrestleMania for me. And I can sit there and almost commentate the whole pay-per-view, word for word. That's how many times I've watched it, because there was a time when by me having it on tape, I would watch it almost every day after school. And I would go to my grave saying that the right decision was to make the switch for Hogan. Because at the time, you didn't send the fans home unhappy. And if Bret wasn't going to retain, which he shouldn't have, and I'm a huge Bret Hart fan, but considering where you wanted to go with Yokozuna, it wouldn't have made sense. And that was the first time you wanted to really establish a Royal Rumble winner getting the championship. It made sense for Yoko to win. But with Hogan, you know, that allowed Hogan to get, you know, yeah, he got a reign, but it also allowed Yokozuna to get a win over Hogan later on.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And this is pre-internet days, so it was cool that nobody was bitching online about it. So you didn't hear about it until like years later, or you heard it firsthand with somebody in person who had something to say about it. And, being my first WrestleMania was WrestleMania 7 as far as which one I ordered first. And I can remember it being a big deal because a couple blocks from where I live was our local Garden State Cable before it became Xfinity. That was their, like, the cable company. They had a little office there. And I can remember, like, walking in there, and they would had promotional postcards of, like, the Hogan with, the comic book drawing with the American flag behind him and everything. And that was, once I saw that, I was like, I was telling my mom and dad, I'm like, I got to order this. I want this. Like, I know we're here to talk about whatever else you guys are talking about, cable, but can we just tack that on now so I can go home and watch that on First Run pay-per-view? I know I'm showing my age when I say First Run pay-per-view. People are like, whoa, like, really? Like, yeah, First Run pay-per-view, man. That was my first WrestleMania that I ordered. But again, hopefully we get a good show this weekend. I'm excited about NXT TakeOver tonight and, WrestleMania this weekend. And let everybody know once again where they can find your podcast because, again, 10 years, it's worth noting and making a stance of where they can find it, and everybody can go in and watch and download and stream and do all that great stuff that gets you the views.
Oh, yeah, I definitely appreciate that, man. Before I get there, I definitely want to appreciate you, one, for the invite, but also, I had a tough time back in November, December with my mother, father, and wife having COVID, and you was a true friend just checking on me, man. And, I will always remember that for the rest of my life and love and appreciate you for that, brother. So thank you so much.
Definitely. I mean, you know how I am when it comes to mothers. So, and just family in general, man. It's just, and, not to go on a tirade about anything else, I was thinking last night when you see all these people tweeting crazy conspiracy theory stuff online and everything. And I just said to myself before I tweeted something out, I'm like, why is it so hard just to be nice? Is it really it doesn't take no energy at all just to be nice? If you go to a store, you open the door for somebody. You know what I mean? Like, you're getting checked out at a store, you say thank you. Have a great day. Be safe. It's for some people, there's like a mental block of why it's so hard just to be good, decent human beings. So, I know you went through a tough time, and, I had to check up on you, man. You know what I mean? Because I would want somebody to check up on me. Nobody knows what anybody's going through from day to day, from moment to moment, so just keep that mindset. You don't know what people are going through for each moment. People can mask a lot of things, so just be nice.
And a little niceness can go a long way, So, yeah, I just wanted to say that. I told you before, but I definitely wanted to say it publicly, that I really appreciated that. And, people can find me on all social media platforms. Search the Wrestling Wrealm, Realm spelt with a W, so we can have alliteration. That was my mother. That was her idea. WREALM. WREALM. So find us at Wrestling Wrealm on all social media platforms. Search is youtube.com/The Wrestling Wrealm. Help us get to 1,000 subscribers. We're trying to get there. We got the watch time. We just need the subscribers. We're at 875. So we would definitely appreciate people clicking the link and hitting subscribe. But also we're on Apple and Google and all podcasting platforms as well. You can find a lot of content. So we will definitely keep you entertained. I promise you it's a lot of binge-worthy stuff watching on the YouTube channel. If you're an NWO fan, as they just got inducted in the Hall of Fame, we did a spoof reenacting their paid promotion. But we also did something sort of like DX. So it's a lot of funny stuff on there on our channel, so check it out.
Well, Brian, I appreciate you coming on and sharing some of your WrestleMania moments and predictions and stories with us. It's been really cool. I enjoy listening and watching the podcast and the interactions you and Dwayne have. It's just really cool because it's not just straight, talking wrestling. Like, there's a lot of like funny moments and interactions with it. And it's good to get lost in the wrestling moment and the wrestling stories that you guys share. So I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to us, and have a great WrestleMania weekend. Enjoy the pay-per-view, and we got to do this again sometime.
Yeah, definitely. I'm pretty sure we'll be talking on the Twitterverse during WrestleMania weekend, sharing, exchanging what our thoughts is. So definitely have fun. I really appreciate this. It's like you said, it's always great to talk wrestling, always great to talk WrestleMania. I appreciate, you allowing me to relive some of the memories and sharing some of your memories with me as well.
And as Bully Ray always says, get on that Twitter machine and, follow him on Twitter. And again, we just can't wait to talk to you again.
All right. This is Brian H. Waters, co-host of the Wrestling Wrealm, and you are listening to Mix Master V on MMB Radio.